I landed at Ninoy Aquino International Airport in Manila with $847 in my checking account, a duffel bag, and absolutely no plan beyond the next 3 days. I was 64 years old. Most men my age were planning golf retirement in Florida. I was betting everything I had left on a country I'd never set foot in. That was 7 years ago. I'm 71 now, and I'm going to tell you the truth about whether you can move to the Philippines with no savings. Not the YouTube fantasy version, the real version. Because I did it, and it nearly killed me. And I learned things nobody talks about. My name's Martin. I worked 40 years in manufacturing in Ohio, machine operator, then floor supervisor, decent union job. I had a wife, a house, a retirement plan. Then 2008 hit and the plant closed. My 401k got gutted. The divorce took the house. By 2016, I was 64, working part-time at Lowe's for $11 an hour, living in a one-bedroom apartment I could barely afford, looking at a Social Security check that wouldn't start for another year and would pay maybe $1,400 a month when it did. I was broke, too old to rebuild in America, and facing the reality that I'd probably work until I died because I couldn't afford not to. Then I met Felix. He was a customer at Lowe's, Filipino guy about my age, buying supplies for his son's house. We got talking, and when he found out I was a supervisor who knew manufacturing, he told me his nephew in Manila ran a small furniture shop and was always looking for people who understood production workflow. I laughed, told him I couldn't even afford a vacation to the Philippines, let alone move there. Felix got quiet. Then he said, "My friend, you can't afford to stay here. In the Philippines, $1,400 a month, you live good. Here, you starve. What do you have to lose?" He had a point. I had $0 to lose because I had $0. I spent 3 months researching obsessively. Cost of living, visa requirements, health care, jobs for foreigners. And here's what I learned. Moving to the Philippines with no money is possible, but barely. And only if you do very specific things in a very specific order. First, the visa situation. Americans get 30 days visa-free on arrival. You can extend that to 59 days for about $50 at immigration. After that, you can keep extending as a tourist for up to 3 years, though it gets expensive and bureaucratic. The better path, if you're my age, is the SRRV, Special Resident Retirees Visa. You need to be 50 or older and deposit $10,000 in a Philippine bank, or $20,000 if you're under 50. I didn't have $10,000. I didn't have $1,000. So my plan was this: enter on the tourist visa, find work, any work, survive long enough to start collecting Social Security at 65, then figure out the visa situation with that income. Stupid plan? Maybe. Desperate plan? Absolutely. I sold everything I owned, furniture, TV, my truck that barely ran, got $1,100 total, bought a one-way ticket to Manila for $680. That left me $420 plus the $847 in my account, $1,267 total to start a new life at 64, in a country where I knew one person who knew someone. I told my daughter. She cried, begged me not to go, said I was being reckless. She was right, but staying was slower suicide. At least this way I had a chance. Felix connected me with his nephew, Carlo. Carlo ran a small furniture manufacturing shop in Quezon City, 6 employees making custom pieces for local businesses. He agreed to let me work there, teaching his guys efficiency improvements for room and board plus $200 a month cash. $200. In America, that's a joke. In the Philippines, if someone's covering your housing and food, it's survival. I landed in Manila on a Tuesday morning in January 2017. The heat hit me like a wall. The airport was chaos. I had no idea how money worked, how to get a SIM card, where to go. I was 64 years old, standing in a country where everything was unfamiliar, and I had $1,267 between me and homelessness. Carlo picked me up. He was younger than I expected, maybe 35, and his English was good. He drove me to Quezon City in a van that had no air conditioning and springs poking through the seat. We passed slums, traffic that made no sense, jeepneys packed with people, street vendors selling things I couldn't identify. I thought, what have I done? Carlo's shop was in a semi-industrial area. Concrete building, tin roof, open on the sides, loud with saws and sanders. He showed me the workspace, introduced me to his crew, all younger guys, mid-20s to mid-30s, friendly but clearly skeptical of the old American. Then he took me upstairs to my room. It was above the shop. One small room, a mattress on the floor, a folding table, one chair, a fan, and a bathroom the size of a closet with a bucket for a shower. No air conditioning, no kitchen. Walls so thin I could hear everything downstairs. Carlo saw my face. "Sir Marty, I know it is not much, but it is yours, and you are safe here." I thanked him, waited until he left. Then I sat on that mattress and genuinely didn't know if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life or the gutsiest move I'd ever pulled. The first month was brutal. The heat was unbearable. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat. The noise from the shop started at 6 a.m. The food was all rice and fish and things I didn't recognize. I had stomach issues for 2 weeks straight. I lost 15 pounds. But I worked. I watched Carlo's operation and started making suggestions. Better workflow layout. Different lumber storage to reduce waste. A simple scheduling system so they weren't constantly scrambling. Carlo listened. The guys were skeptical at first, but when the changes actually saved time and material, they came around. Carlo started paying me $250 a month instead of $200. $50 doesn't sound like much, but it was a 25% raise, and it mattered. I learned to live on almost nothing. My only expenses were toiletries, phone load, occasional snacks. Maybe $60 a month total. I was saving $190 monthly, and in 4 months I'd have enough saved to rent my own place if I needed to. But here's what nobody tells you about moving somewhere with no money. You're completely vulnerable. One illness, one accident, one conflict with your employer, and you're done. No safety net, no backup plan. That reality hit me in month 3. I got dengue fever. If you don't know, it's a mosquito-borne virus common in the tropics, and it flattened me. High fever, crushing body aches, complete exhaustion. I couldn't work for a week. Carlo's wife, Anna, brought me food and made sure I drank enough fluids. Carlo told me not to worry about the work, but I was terrified. I wasn't earning. I was burning through my tiny savings on medicine, and I was acutely aware that I was a 64-year-old man with no health insurance in a country where I had no legal right to be if I couldn't support myself. I recovered, but it scared me straight. I realized I needed a real plan. Month 5, I turned 65. My Social Security kicked in, $1,430 a month, deposited into my U.S. bank account. I could access it through ATMs here, though the fees were brutal. That changed everything. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't desperate anymore. I told Carlo I wanted to find my own place, not because I was ungrateful, but because I needed independence. He understood. Helped me find a studio apartment in Novaliches, about 20 minutes away, for $120 a month. Tiny, but it had a real bathroom and a small kitchen area. I kept working for Carlo part-time, and he kept paying me $250 monthly. Combined with my Social Security, I had $1,680 a month. In America, that's poverty. In the Philippines, if you're careful, it's comfortable. Let me break down my actual monthly costs after I got my own place, because this is what people really want to know. Rent, $120. Electricity, $25. I only ran the fan at night. Water, $3. Internet, $20 for decent speed. Phone, $5 prepaid. Food, $200. I cooked most meals, ate local. Transportation, $30. Jeepneys and occasional tricycle. Toiletries and household stuff, $20. That's $423 monthly for basics. I had over $1,200 left every month. That covered eating out sometimes, emergencies, sending a little money back to my daughter, and actually saving. For the first time in a decade, I was saving money. But here's the key thing I want you to understand. I only made this work because Carlo gave me that initial landing pad, room and board for those first months while I had nothing. Without that, I'd have burned through my $1,267 in a few weeks and been on the street. So can you move to the Philippines with $0 in savings? Technically, yes, but only if you have one of these situations. 1. You have a contact here who'll house you while you get established. Friend, relative, online connection you've built real trust with. Without that, you're gambling with your life. 2. You have income coming in immediately. Remote work you can do anywhere, pension, Social Security. If you're landing with zero money and zero income, you won't make it. 3. You have a skill that's valuable here, and you've lined up work before you arrive. Teaching English, technical skills, something legitimate. The "I'll figure it out when I get there" approach is how you end up begging for a plane ticket home. I've met dozens of foreigners here over the years who tried to do this on a prayer. Most failed and left. A few ended up in really dark places. I met a guy at a bar in Manila, American, maybe 55. He'd come over with $2,000, no job, no plan, thinking he'd live cheap and find himself. 6 months later, he was broke, visa overstayed, sleeping in a cheap boarding house, borrowing money from other expats. Last I heard, he got deported. This isn't a country where you can just show up and wing it, especially if you're older. You need some combination of money, income, connections, or skills. Ideally more than one. The other brutal truth. Being a senior man here with no money makes you vulnerable in specific ways. There's a whole ecosystem of people who see older foreign men as targets. Bar girls who'll drain your money and disappear. Families who'll befriend you specifically to ask for financial help. Scammers who run every variation of sob story you can imagine. I saw it happen to a British guy in our neighborhood. Retired, limited pension, met a younger Filipina online, married her fast, started supporting her entire extended family. Within 2 years, they'd bled him dry and the wife left. He ended up back in the UK, broken and broke. I avoided that by keeping my financial situation private and not trying to solve everyone's problems with my wallet. When people asked what I did, I said I worked at a furniture shop. Didn't mention Social Security. Lived modestly. Didn't flash money. Here's what actually made my life work here long term. I became part of the community instead of staying a foreigner. I started going to the local church. I'm not particularly religious, but in the Philippines, church is social life. I met people, got invited to things. I learned basic Tagalog. Not fluent, but enough to be polite and show effort. I helped neighbors with things I knew how to do. Fixed a busted table, helped someone figure out an electrical issue, taught a kid some woodworking basics. Not because I wanted something, because that's how you build real relationships. By year 2, I had actual friends. I was invited to birthdays, fiestas, family gatherings. I wasn't the rich foreigner. I was Mang Marty who lived down the street and knew how to fix things. That social network became more valuable than money. When I needed help, people showed up. When I was sick, neighbors checked on me. When I had visa issues and needed to navigate bureaucracy, someone's cousin worked at immigration and walked me through it. You can't buy that. You build it by being present, respectful, and genuine. Now, 7 years in, my life looks like this. I still work part-time with Carlo, more as a consultant now. I live in a better apartment, $180 a month, one bedroom, quieter area. My expenses run about $600 monthly for everything. I save the rest, and I built up a buffer of about $8,000, enough that I'm not one emergency away from disaster. I'm 71, healthier than I was at 64, and I wake up without the crushing anxiety I lived with in Ohio. I'm not rich, but I'm okay. And okay is something I didn't think I'd ever feel again. So to answer the question, can you move to the Philippines with $0 in savings? Yes, barely, if you have income or a guaranteed soft landing. But should you? That's different. It's risky as hell. If I had it to do over with more resources, I would have saved $3,000 to $5,000 first to have a real cushion. But I didn't have that option. I had $847 and a one-way ticket, and somehow I made it work. If you're in a similar spot, broke, older, desperate for a way out, I'm not going to tell you not to try, but go in with your eyes open. Have some kind of plan. Line up income or housing before you land. Learn about the culture. Be humble. Be smart. And be ready for it to be harder than you think. Before I go, I want to point you towards something useful. There's a book called Everything I Learned Living Abroad, not mine, but it covers the real nuts and bolts of making this life work. Visa strategies, cost breakdowns, cultural stuff nobody tells you. I wish I'd had it 7 years ago. Might have saved me some painful lessons. Links in the description below. And if this story helped you, if you're considering this move or know someone who is, do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. I'll keep sharing the real experiences, the hard lessons, the truth nobody else wants to tell you. No fantasy, no sales pitch, just what actually happened. Thanks for watching. Salamat. And whatever you decide, make sure it's a decision, not just desperation. There's a difference, and it matters.